Take a deep breath. Let the day slip away like sand falling through an hourglass. The lights of the modern world, the glowing screens, the ticking clocks, the constant scroll, all of it fades. Tonight you're invited to drift into a different kind of time. Not one marked by deadlines or alarms, but something older, stranger, something buried beneath layers of dust and forgotten myths. This is not the time of seconds and minutes, but of stars and cycles, of time kept by shadows on stone and secrets whispered in temple halls. Tonight's journey is not to the future, but to the past, where ancient minds may have pondered something far more mysterious than history admits. Somewhere between myth and memory, between fact and speculation, there lies a strange rhythm. In old clay tablets, carved stones, and cryptic rituals, hints emerge that ancient civilizations may have had notions of time far more complex than we assume. Ideas that resonate eerily with theories of time travel, parallel worlds, and cosmic loops. So settle into stillness. Let the hum of the present soften and allow yourself to float gently, not just through history, but through the folds of time itself. Our first stop, the marshy lands of ancient Sumer, where humanity's first known civilization built not just cities, but calendars, ziggurats, and something else. Perhaps a way to remember time, or to bend it. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of an ancient riverbank, where the Tigris and Euphrates snake silently across the plains. The sky above is dark but wide. No light pollution here. Just stars. Countless, piercing, deliberate. Now, imagine the year is 3100 BCE. You are in Sumer, the land of scribes, priests, and watchers of the heavens. The ziggurats rise like layered staircases to the gods. Towering structures covered in brick, often aligned with the heavens, but perhaps also something more. The Sumerians weren't just early city builders, they were obsessive record keepers. They tracked time not only in the daily sense, but in sweeping cosmic terms. They divided their lives into cycles that mirrored the movements of stars and planets. Their calendar was lunar, yes, but also based on 12 and 60, numbers that continue to shape how we tell time today. 60 seconds in a minute, 12 months in a year. The fingerprints of their thinking remain, but deeper in their records, strange patterns emerge. Take the Sumerian king list, an ancient cuneiform document etched into stone. On its surface it appears straightforward, a list of rulers and their reigns, but look closer. The earliest kings are said to have ruled for tens of thousands of years. 8 kings are recorded to have reigned for a combined 241,200 years before a great flood washed them away. A metaphor? Perhaps? A symbolic myth? Possibly. But some researchers, fringe thinkers admittedly, suggest a different reading. What if these numbers weren't mere exaggerations, but reflections of something else? Echoes from another cycle of civilization, or hints that time, as the Sumerians understood it, did not move in a straight line, but in loops, repeating epochs, resets, rewinds. Let your breath soften. Imagine the king list not as history, but as a fragment of memory, collective, distorted, but real. What kind of civilization could record such spans of time? Did they measure it differently? Oh, or had they seen it before? Consider this too. The Sumerians credited their knowledge to beings they called the Anunnaki. Deities, yes, in mythology, but in some interpretations, advanced beings who descended from the skies. Some even suggest they were time travelers. It sounds fantastical, and it likely is. But we are not here to conclude, only to float gently between possibilities. What matters is that the Sumerians themselves believed their knowledge of stars, of cycles, of kings and floods was given to them, not discovered, given. In the quiet of the night, imagine a culture where knowledge arrives not slowly but all at once, as if remembered rather than invented. As if someone had already lived it. Look around you in this imagined world. There are no digital clocks, no ticking watches. Time is kept by water dripping through bowls, by the shadow of a sundial, by the path of Venus across the sky. And yet, somehow, they understood long-term cycles, equinoxes, solstices, the Saros eclipse cycle, things we associate with modern astronomy. They named the stars, gave personality to constellations, calculated planetary orbits with a precision that, to this day, puzzles scholars. Now slow your thoughts even more. In their temple cities, priests performed rituals to harmonize with the heavens. They believed time was not just to be measured, but to be participated in. Ceremonies marked turning points, and ziggurats may have been more than temples. Some believed they were observatories, others perhaps instruments, antennas for tuning into cosmic rhythms, or even time machines of another sort. Not for traveling forward or back in the way we imagine, but for sensing consciousness with a greater temporal current. There's an ancient tablet known as the Biol, a PIN that catalogs stars and planetary positions with extraordinary detail. It aligns with observations made thousands of years later. Again and again, ancient Mesopotamian records show uncanny astronomical accuracy. Some say it's coincidence. Others whisper that we have underestimated what they knew, or where they got it. As you drift further, imagine the Anunnaki again, not as aliens, not as gods, but as metaphors. Maybe they represent a lost civilization, a pre-Sumerian culture with advanced understanding of time and stars, one that was wiped out in some great upheaval, like the flood mentioned in the king list and remembered only in myth. Or perhaps they are what the Sumerians saw in visions, patterns, shapes, figures, a kind of time dream where ancient seers perceived other timelines bleeding into theirs. There is something called ancestral memory, the idea that certain knowledge, especially cosmic or symbolic, is inherited, not taught. What if the Sumerians remembered something humanity had once known and forgotten? The rhythm of their lives was built around time as a living force, not just a measurement, but a being, a flow, a presence. In their cosmology, time was divine, The gods moved through it, bent it, guarded it, and sometimes they gave it to humans in the form of calendars, stories, prophecies, echoes of knowledge from before. In the Book of Enoch, a much later text, but one also concerned with divine watchers and strange revelations, there is mention of the watchers descending to earth, teaching forbidden knowledge, teaching the secrets of heaven, time, stars, cycles. Could this be another version of the same story, retold over and over, like a broken clock echoing the same chime, each time a little softer? Perhaps, or perhaps not. But again, we do not chase conclusions here. We simply float, as if on a river, past forgotten ruins, half-buried truths, and myths dressed in stone. And so you lie here, in the warmth of the night, letting the world of the Sumerians fade behind your eyelids. You see the torch-lit temple halls, the astronomer priests, the clay tablets, the distant stars. You see time, not as a straight arrow, but as a spiral, a dance, a dream, and then it passes. The helm of that ancient world fades, and a new current begins to carry you forward, deeper into the past, or perhaps to something that runs alongside it. Another loop, another thought. Are you ready to drift further? Now we drift westward, across time, across sand and sea, to the blue-tinged coastlines of ancient Greece. The soft lapping of waves against stone harbors, the rustling of olive trees in the wind, lanterns glowing in the distance as a ship slowly moors under a crescent moon. And on this quiet island, Samos, a boy is born. His name is Pythagoras. Most know him, if they know him at all, from the cold abstraction of school. Triangles and hypotenuses, theorems carved onto chalkboards. But in his time, Pythagoras was not just a mathematician. He was something far stranger, a mystic, a prophet, a man who spoke of numbers not just as tools but as beings, sacred forces, keys to the hidden architecture of the universe. And Pythagoras believed something else, something quietly astonishing. He believed he had lived before. Imagine yourself now in the dusky courtyard of a temple school in Croton, where Pythagoras taught in whispers and riddles. The wind carries the scent of olive oil and burnt incense. His students, who lived by strict codes of silence and vegetarian purity, believed their teacher had touched the eternal, that he remembered not only ideas from another life, but entire lives. He spoke, calmly and matter-of-factly, of having once been a soldier in the Trojan War. In another life, he said, he was Euphorbus, a warrior who fought beside Hector and died under Achilles' spear. He described scenes from that long-past life with such vivid clarity, his followers did not question him. They listened. They accepted. They believed. Now exhale slowly. The idea of reincarnation was not new in Pythagoras' time, but he introduced something radical. He claimed that time itself was not a straight line, but a repeating cycle. That souls move through bodies like travelers boarding a train at different stations. That knowledge, too, could be remembered, not learned. and that perhaps the truths he spoke of, geometries, harmonics, cosmology, were not discoveries at all. They were memories, memories from another world, another time. In the teachings of his secretive brotherhood, numbers were sacred, not because they counted things, but because they revealed hidden patterns. Ratios of string lengths created harmonies. Simple numerical relationships governed the movement of the heavens. The music of the spheres, he called it, a soundless harmony formed by the orbiting of celestial bodies, audible only to the soul. And what if, he proposed, understanding this harmony could allow one to step outside of time, not bodily, not like a time machine, but consciously, spiritually, a kind of return. Take a moment to let that thought settle. The idea that your mind, with enough attunement, enough harmony, might pierce through the veil of the now, and recall something from another loop in the great cosmic spiral. Pythagoras said time was a wheel, and that, in rare moments, one might feel the spokes as they passed again. The déjà vu of the soul, the recognition of a place never visited, a problem already solved, a name already known. He was not alone in these thoughts. Later philosophers, like Plato, echoed these strange truths. In Plato's Meno, Socrates argues that learning is merely remembering, that we are born with knowledge, buried deep, waiting to be recalled. That time is not the bringer of newness, but the revealer of what has always been. And while these ideas seem dreamy, metaphysical, their roots dig into the very core of what time might be. Not a direction, not a quantity, but a state, a resonance. Let your thoughts settle on this. What if time travel does not require machines or speeds or wormholes, but stillness? What if, to glimpse another life, another age, you do not rush forward, you sink inward? There are stories of Pythagoras stopping his breath, entering trances, visiting temples where geometry and sound merged into visions. His followers believed that to be still, truly still, was to align with the divine rhythm of all things, and that from that stillness the past could whisper. There is a tale, gentle and curious, of how Pythagoras once recognized a shield in a temple as his own, not from this life, but from his time as Euphorbus. He spoke of its design, its battle scars, the moment he lost it. He smiled as he spoke, not with pride or madness, but with calm familiarity, as if remembering a dream that had become real again. The line between memory and time, between myth and science, grows blurry here, but we do not need to untangle it. We are simply drifting through it. Let the shapes flow past. The sacred triangle, the orbits of spheres, the whisper of ancient songs that once aligned the soul with eternity. You may wonder, lying there now in the comfort of modern stillness, whether any of this is true. But the truth, perhaps, is not the point. The experience of time, not as chronology, but as memory, is a very human thing. Have you ever felt that a place was waiting for you? That a problem was familiar before you even began it? That a stranger's face stirred something deeper than explanation? Maybe those are echoes. Maybe those are spokes turning past you again. Or maybe they read the harmonics of something else, something Pythagoras heard in the silence between sounds. So rest now. Let the stone steps of the temple fade from beneath your feet. The torchlight dims. The smell of ink and parchment dissolves into night. The philosopher fades into shadow, and something new begins to emerge. A different vision, not mathematical but monumental, not of sound and number, but of stone and sand and riddles buried deep. The next part of our journey is not in a book or a theorem. It's underground, beneath the paws of a lion-bodied statue, beneath wind-swept dunes where time seems to pool and warp like heat on the horizon. The pyramids await. Let your breath settle. The world grows quieter now. You feel the temperature drop slightly, as if descending into cool stone. Overhead, the sun sets behind shifting sands. The air is dry, still, ancient. We now arrive in Egypt, not the Egypt of tourists and cameras, but the Egypt of dust-swept centuries, of glowing oil lamps and low, echoing footsteps. Imagine yourself walking toward the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its vast sides rise into the twilight like something not merely built, but remembered. A monument that defies its time. To stand at its base is to confront a contradiction. A structure so precise, so immense, and so mathematically elegant, it seems almost unplaceable in its own era. Somewhere deep within, there is a chamber, and in that chamber is a box, a granite coffer, carved from a single stone, too large to have been brought in after construction. It sits in silence, untouched, perfectly still. Now imagine what the builders saw, and imagine what they knew. Among historians and researchers, there is a quiet fascination with the idea that these ancient engineers understood more than they should have. The Great Pyramid is aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal directions. Its base is nearly a perfect square, and the difference in side lengths is measured in mere inches. But these are not just technical marvels, they're clues. Some believe the pyramid encodes mathematical constants, pi, the golden ratio, long before they were formally known. Others suggest it reflects astronomical knowledge, the precession of the equinoxes, the position of Orion's belt, even Earth's curvature. And then there are the whispers. Theories that the pyramid was not simply a tomb or a monument, but a message. A structure designed to endure not for a lifetime, or even a dynasty, but forever. A time capsule, a riddle carved in stone. Among the more curious ideas which we drift toward now, slowly, without judgment, is the notion that the pyramid was meant for those not of its time, perhaps even not of its world. Some claim the builders were guided by knowledge that came not from the past, but from the future. Pause here. Let that notion hang in the still air. This theory, often dismissed as fanciful, asks, what if time does not only move forward? What if messages, ideas, even designs could move backward, rippling through dreams, symbols, or sudden inspiration? Not full blueprints, but hints, shadows, echoes. Ancient Egyptian culture was deeply invested in the afterlife. Their books, their art, their architecture, all pointed beyond the veil of death. But what if their obsession with the beyond was not only spiritual? What if they were grasping towards something else, a continuity not only of soul, but of knowledge? Consider the Sphinx, crouched eternally before the pyramid, eroded not by wind, but by water, suggesting an age far older than traditionally believed. Some geologists argue it predates the Old Kingdom entirely, that it could have stood when Egypt was not yet Egypt, watching stars shift across skies unfamiliar to us now. And in that ancient world where myth and time bent into each other, stories emerged. Of Thoth, the god of wisdom, who could travel between worlds and who gifted writing to mankind. Of Zep Tepi, the first time, a mythic golden age when gods walked the earth and time itself flowed differently. These weren't just stories. Some say they were memories. Memories of something lost or perhaps glimpsed in a loop. There's a concept found in Hermetic texts and later esoteric traditions that time repeats, not in exact cycles, but in spirals. That what has happened will happen again, not identically, but resonantly. The Great Pyramid, in this view, is a point on that spiral, a fixed node designed to survive the rise and fall of civilizations, waiting for someone to decode it. You don't need to believe this to feel its poetry. Even traditional Egyptologists acknowledge the mystery, the lack of inscriptions inside the Great Pyramid, the unexplained resonance of its chambers, the enormous scale of its construction, completed with no known advanced tools, with tolerances tighter than modern stonework. And there is something deeper here, a silence inside the stone. What if the pyramid was not just built to be seen, but to be felt? Researchers have discovered that certain chambers inside the pyramid amplify low-frequency sound, frequencies that may affect the human brain, inducing altered states. Some have speculated that the king's chamber may have been used for initiations or visions, not merely of death, but of time. Imagine lying in that chamber, the granite around you absorbing all heat, no sound save for your breath, and then a deep, almost inaudible hum, a vibration through your bones. Not frightening, just immense. Time does strange things in silence. There are accounts, quiet, often forgotten, of travelers who spent a night inside the pyramid and emerged changed. One Victorian explorer reported a vision of floating above the earth. Another claimed to see lights pulsing within the stone itself. Not ghosts, not gods, but something else, a presence, a pressure. Maybe these were dreams, or maybe they were memories not yet lived. Among physicists today, there are those who quietly explore ideas like retrocausality, the notion that effects might precede causes, that information might travel backward through quantum entanglement. It's not mainstream, but it's not nonsense either. And in that gentle space between science and story, something opens. The pyramid, standing still for 4,000 years, may not be a beacon, but a mirror, a structure so fixed in time that it becomes timeless. And in timelessness, strange things become possible. Perhaps it was not meant to be understood by those who built it, but by us or by someone even further in the future. A structure not of its age, but outside of age. As your thoughts begin to drift now, feel the texture of the stone under your fingertips. Cold, smooth, impossibly old. The air is still. The stars above the pyramid blink slowly. Nothing rushes here. Time does not press forward. It just is. And with that sensation, we step back from the desert. The sands begin to blow again. The chamber fades. The whispers of the past are tucked gently back into the stone. But not all ancient time theories were built from geometry and astronomy. Some were whispered by people whose lives were vastly different, less grand, less monumental. Yet in their quiet corners of history, they too reached across time. And in our final segment, we'll visit one of those corners, a place of ordinary lives, farmers, traders, monks, where dreams and visions sometimes blurred the line between now and then. So when you're ready, we'll continue. The path is soft beneath your feet, and the final story awaits. Let the noise fall away again. You are no longer in a desert or under the weight of massive stone. You are now among quiet hills, damp and green, veiled in morning mist. Somewhere in what is now Europe. The year is not exact. Perhaps the 9th century, perhaps later. It doesn't matter. You walk up a warm dirt path toward a modest stone structure, a monastery, simple and square, nestled in the fold of a forested valley. The air smells of wet wood and moss. A single bell tolls, echoing through the trees. This is a place outside of time. Not in legend, but in the way its people lived. Inside, the monks move slowly, deliberately. Their days are divided into hours not by sun, but by bells, prayers, silence, chants. In the scriptorium, a room where light filters in through narrow windows, they copy texts by hand. Ancient texts, some already old, when Rome fell. These were not kings, not scientists, not architects, but in their isolation, in the vast silence of their daily routines, some of these men claim to see things, impossible things. There is a recorded story from a monastery in what is now Germany of a monk named Engelbrecht. He claimed to have seen visions while meditating, not of angels or hellfire, but of cities made of glass and metal, of machines that flew through the sky. He described lights that moved faster than birds and voices that came from boxes. The other monks wrote it down, preserved it in the margins of a manuscript, not because they believed it, but because it was strange. They called it a vision, a dream. But the language he used, it stirs the imagination. And he was not alone. In England, there is the curious tale of a boy named Ethelwold, who vanished from a village and returned 3 days later, claiming he had been taken by beings of light to a place where the sun never moved and where people floated across smooth roads. A peasant child, with no knowledge of the wider world, describing something oddly futuristic. Could these have been dreams? Certainly. Could they be interpreted as religious metaphors? Of course. But if you allow your mind to stay soft, porous, half asleep, you may find something else there. Time in the medieval world was less rigid. It was not measured in minutes, but in meals, bells, seasons. People lived in loops of planting, harvesting, fasting, and feasting. Days blurred into each other. Dreams were taken seriously. A strange vision might be a message from God or from beyond. And into this gentle fog of half-truth and sleep came the concept of the time walker. In a tiny text preserved in a French abbey, there is a curious passage rarely cited, often ignored, describing a man who walked 3 winters ahead of his own. The manuscript describes him as a shepherd who one day returned to his village and accurately predicted a storm, a famine, and even the death of a local noble. The villagers, frightened, accused him of sorcery. But the monk who recorded the tale posed a different theory, that the man had seen the shadows of time pass across the meadow, as if he were standing in 2 seasons at once. Poetic, certainly, but perhaps not only that. You see, even today, there are studies into how certain altered states of consciousness, through meditation, isolation, even repetitive labor, can shift our perception of time. Some monks, in their long hours of silence and repetition, may have entered states where the boundaries of past and future blurred. One could argue it's the brain seeking order in chaos. Or perhaps, just perhaps, it's the brain tuning in to something else. There is a lesser-known theory in neuroscience called chronesthesia, the mental ability to be aware of the past and future. Some people seem to experience this more vividly than others. They have sharper memories, deeper foresight. Could the slow, reflective lives of monastics have heightened this ability? Could their dreams have reached further than most? Imagine yourself as one of them now. Your days are quiet. You eat simple meals, sleep in a narrow cot, rise with the bells. Your hands are stained with ink from copying texts. You don't rush, you don't chase, you reflect. And one evening, after many days of silence, you begin to see something behind your closed eyes. Not a saint or a flame, but a city glowing with lights. A voice calling your name in a language you do not yet understand, and then silence again. You tell no one. But in the quiet of your cell, by candlelight, you write it down, just in case it matters. There are many such notes scattered through medieval texts, impossible knowledge recorded long before it should have existed, shapes that resemble telescopes, descriptions of machines, even references to round worlds, long before such things were accepted. Perhaps they were guesses, perhaps dreams, or perhaps tiny leaks in the dam of time. And it wasn't only monks. In markets and farms, people told stories of sleeping saints, individuals who vanished for years and returned unchanged, claiming to have visited another world or another age. In Eastern Europe, there are tales of shepherds who walked into fog and emerged a generation later, confused, unchanged. These stories are echoes, not proven, but persistent. And in that persistence, something gentle unfolds. The sense that time, for most of history, was not seen as a single thread, but a tapestry, one where dreams mattered. where visions could be windows, and where even the smallest person might, for a moment, glimpse something far ahead or far behind. Let your breath soften again. The mist over the monastery valley begins to fade. The candlelight flickers once more, then dims. You are no longer standing in the scriptorium. The ink has dried. The bells have rung. The monk sleeps. And so soon will you. But before we drift into full silence, let's return for a moment to the world we know, the present. And let's consider gently what all this might mean. The pyramids, the myths, the visions, the fragments, all stories of time out of place. Some are science, some are metaphor, some are dreams. But perhaps they all whispered the same thing, that time is not a straight road, but a soft, winding path, and that on quiet nights in old stones or deep sleep, we sometimes step off it, and when we do, we leave behind little clues. So now, let's rest. Let the stories close their pages. Let the bells stop ringing. Let the stars settle into their orbits once again. Time will continue, forward, backward, looping gently. But tonight it pauses for you. Sleep well, time traveler. You're exactly where you're meant to be.